The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every eye was fixed on the front, where the judge sat, the gavel poised, waiting to mark yet another moment in what had already become an intensely dramatic legal battle. But no one expected what happened next. For weeks, the prosecution had built a case against Sean Diddy Combs, one of the most powerful moguls in the entertainment industry. The charges they brought against him were serious, accusations that carried the weight of criminal history, violent conspiracy, racketeering, and evidence tampering. These were charges that, if proven, could not only destroy Diddy's career, but also leave him facing years behind bars. The courtroom had been buzzing with speculation, and the media had been quick to paint Diddy as the villain, the mastermind behind a series of criminal activities. He was not just a hip-hop mogul. To them, he was a dangerous figure who had used his influence and wealth for illicit gains. But as the trial unfolded, the cracks in the prosecution's case began to appear. What started as a seemingly airtight case quickly turned into a mess of contradictions, questionable evidence, and unreliable witnesses. Yet, nothing could have prepared the courtroom for the shocking revelation that came next. It was the final week of the trial. The defense team, led by some of the best legal minds in the country, had been slowly chipping away at the prosecution's case, pointing out the inconsistencies and raising doubts at every turn. But the moment of truth came when the prosecution was about to present what they claimed was their final, decisive piece of evidence, the key to proving Diddy's involvement in the alleged criminal activities. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecution prepared to unveil what they described as the smoking gun, the evidence that would seal Diddy's fate. But as the assistant district attorney stood up to introduce the evidence, there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. You could feel it. Something was off. The assistant district attorney, visibly shaken, stepped forward, holding up a stack of papers and a USB drive. The crowd waited in anticipation, knowing this was the moment they had been waiting for. But instead of introducing the evidence, the prosecutor hesitated. The pause was long enough to raise questions. Then, as if compelled by something deep inside, the prosecutor made a startling admission that no one could have expected. This evidence, it was tampered with, the prosecutor stammered, her voice shaky. We've just discovered that the footage, the key piece of evidence we were going to present, was altered. We don't know how or when it happened, but it's clear that the footage has been compromised. We cannot, in good conscience, present this as evidence anymore. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. The defense team immediately leaped into action, but they were already a step ahead. They had suspected something like this might happen, and had been quietly working with forensic experts to investigate the evidence in question. The moment the prosecution had presented the footage, the defense had already begun analyzing it for inconsistencies. What they found was damning. Not only was the footage blurry and incomplete, but experts determined that it had been edited at several points, making it unreliable and impossible to use in court. But the revelation didn't stop there. As the prosecutor tried to salvage what little remained of their case, they admitted something that shocked the room even further. The prosecution had relied on a crucial witness, someone who had supposedly seen Diddy at the scene of the alleged crimes. This witness had been a cornerstone of their entire argument, the one person who could place Diddy at the center of the illegal activities. However, under intense questioning from Diddy's defense team, this witness began to unravel. The defense's cross-examination revealed several key contradictions in the witness's testimony. Initially, the witness had claimed to have seen Diddy at a specific location, but when asked to describe the surroundings, the witness couldn't provide consistent details. What's more, it was revealed that the witness had a criminal record, something that had been hidden from the jury until that moment. And worst of all, the witness admitted that they had been offered financial compensation in exchange for their testimony, a disclosure that effectively shattered their credibility. The defense's strategy of meticulously questioning the prosecution's witnesses had paid off in a major way. What was supposed to be the prosecution's slam dunk moment turned into a total disaster, and the courtroom was left in disbelief. The case that had once seemed rock solid had now crumbled into a heap of unreliable testimony and tainted evidence. It wasn't just the evidence that fell apart. The prosecution's case had always been built on the idea that Diddy was an all-powerful figure in the hip-hop world, someone who could manipulate people and resources at will. The idea that Diddy had orchestrated a violent conspiracy and used his influence for illegal activity was the cornerstone of the prosecution's argument. But what the courtroom had just witnessed was the unraveling of that narrative. As each piece of evidence was exposed as either flawed or falsified, the jury could no longer deny that the prosecution's portrayal of Diddy as a criminal mastermind was based on nothing more than speculation, manipulation, and sloppy work. But the most shocking aspect of the revelation wasn't just the collapse of the case. It was the revelation that the prosecution had known about these issues long before the trial. In an uncharacteristic moment of candor, the assistant district attorney admitted that they had been aware of the problems with the evidence for days but had decided to push forward with it anyway, hoping to salvage something from the wreckage of their case. This admission shocked everyone in the room, but it particularly stunned the jury, who now had to confront the possibility that the prosecution had deliberately withheld information that could have helped Diddy's defense. The defense team immediately filed for a mistrial, arguing that the prosecution's actions had violated Diddy's right to a fair trial. The judge, visibly frustrated with the handling of the case, granted the motion, and the jury was dismissed for the day. The courtroom buzzed with speculation as the implications of the day's events began to sink in. How could the prosecution have handled such a high-profile case so badly? How could they have been so careless with the evidence, so negligent with their witnesses? As the dust settled, it became clear that this trial was no longer about Diddy's guilt or innocence. It was about the prosecution's failure to meet even the most basic standards of justice. The courtroom had witnessed something rarely seen in the legal world, a trial completely derailed by its own flawed execution. But as Diddy and his defense team celebrated this unexpected victory, they knew that the battle was far from over. There were still unanswered questions, lingering doubts, and a story that had only just begun to unfold. In the next few weeks, the prosecution's failure would lead to more shocking revelations, some that might change everything we thought we knew about this case. What came next could set the stage for an even bigger scandal, and possibly an even greater legal storm. The world was watching, and the next chapter in this saga was about to be written. Would Diddy emerge completely unscathed, or would the tides turn again? One thing was certain: this courtroom drama had only just begun, and the secrets it held were far from over. In the high-stakes trial that captivated the media and the public alike, Sean Diddy Combs faced several grave charges that could have destroyed not only his reputation, but also his entire career. The prosecution came out swinging, hoping to paint him as a criminal mastermind behind a series of orchestrated crimes. Let's break down the three most serious charges that Diddy faced, each one carrying potentially life-altering consequences. The first and most damaging charge was violent conspiracy. The prosecution alleged that Diddy had used his vast influence and power to orchestrate acts of violence against individuals who either crossed him or posed a threat to his business empire. According to the prosecution, Diddy had manipulated people within his circle to carry out these violent acts, making it appear as though they were isolated incidents, while in fact, they were part of a larger coordinated effort to intimidate and silence those who stood in his way. The claim was serious. Diddy wasn't just a passive participant, he was allegedly the mastermind, pulling the strings behind the scenes. The prosecution argued that he had used his wealth and status to escape the legal repercussions of these acts, essentially operating like a puppet master within the world of hip-hop and business. If the prosecution could prove this charge, it would have been catastrophic, as the nature of the offense could carry years of imprisonment, not to mention the lasting damage to his public image. However, this charge was difficult to prove without strong evidence, and as the trial progressed, it became evident that the prosecution was struggling to present compelling proof that Diddy had directly masterminded any violent actions. The lack of concrete evidence would come to haunt them later in the case. The second charge against Diddy was racketeering, a criminal offense often associated with organized crime syndicates. This was a serious accusation, one that tied Diddy to a network of illegal activities that went far beyond just music or entertainment. The prosecution suggested that Diddy had used his power and business empire as a front for organized crime, with activities ranging from money laundering to more illicit operations hidden under the guise of legitimate business ventures. The charge wasn't just about Diddy's personal actions. It implied that he had built an entire infrastructure to support criminal activities, allegedly using his empire to funnel illegal profits and shield those involved from the law. The prosecution painted him as the head of a criminal enterprise, manipulating the music industry and his business connections for criminal gain. Racketeering charges are some of the most difficult to disprove because they involve intricate webs of evidence and testimony. However, the prosecution struggled to connect Diddy to any tangible illegal activities. While they presented circumstantial evidence and testimonies from alleged former associates, they failed to tie Diddy directly to any organized crime operations. The final charge was perhaps the most serious of all: evidence tampering. The prosecution claimed that Diddy had actively engaged in altering, hiding, or destroying evidence that could have linked him to the violent conspiracy and racketeering activities. This charge suggested that not only was Diddy involved in illegal activities, but he was also willing to go to extreme lengths to cover up his tracks and avoid getting caught. This charge, if proven, could have meant long-term prison sentences. For Diddy, evidence tampering is treated as a major offense, as it undermines the integrity of the judicial system. The prosecution's theory was that Diddy, with his wealth and influence, had the resources to manipulate legal proceedings and interfere with investigations. They believed that the destruction or alteration of key evidence, such as video footage or documents, was a calculated move to ensure his freedom. Yet, as the trial wore on, the defense team successfully cast doubt on the credibility of the evidence presented. Questions arose about the authenticity of the documents and recordings the prosecution claimed were tampered with. The evidence, when scrutinized, was found to be incomplete, unreliable, or misinterpreted. The charges against Diddy were serious, with each one potentially altering the course of his life. The prosecution painted a picture of a dangerous, calculated criminal mastermind, someone who used his status, wealth, and influence to manipulate people and orchestrate illegal activities. But, as the trial progressed, it became clear that the prosecution's case was built on shaky foundations, with evidence that lacked credibility and witnesses whose testimonies fell apart under cross-examination. As we'll see in the following sections, these flaws would be crucial in dismantling the case against Diddy and setting the stage for the courtroom drama that would unfold. From the very beginning, the prosecution's case against Diddy seemed poised for a slam-dunk victory. The charges, violent conspiracy, racketeering, and evidence tampering, were serious, and the stakes were incredibly high. But as the trial wore on, cracks began to appear in the prosecution's argument, and what seemed like a solid case started to fall apart. Let's break down where the prosecution went wrong. The prosecution's biggest flaw was their reliance on shaky evidence that, under scrutiny, fell apart. Their star piece of evidence, surveillance footage allegedly showing Diddy at the scene of a violent altercation, turned out to be a disaster. The video was grainy, unclear, and riddled with inconsistencies. Experts brought in by the defense confirmed that the footage had been doctored, making it completely unreliable. Without solid, verifiable evidence to back their claims, the prosecution's case became a house of cards that could easily collapse. The prosecution's case leaned heavily on witness testimonies, but these witnesses were anything but reliable. Several key witnesses had questionable backgrounds, with some admitting criminal records that could discredit their accounts. Worse still, some witnesses admitted they had been offered deals or financial incentives to testify, further casting doubt on their credibility. The defense team was quick to expose these weaknesses, successfully undermining the prosecution's core arguments. One of the most glaring weaknesses in the prosecution's case was their inability to directly link Diddy to the alleged criminal activities. Despite claims of racketeering and organized crime, the prosecution couldn't provide physical evidence or credible testimony that showed Diddy's direct involvement. With no tangible proof of his participation in these activities, the charges against him lost their substance. As the prosecution faltered, it became clear that they had failed to build a solid, convincing case, and the weight of these flaws would eventually play a key role in Diddy's defense. As the prosecution's case began to unravel, Diddy's legal defense team executed a masterful strategy that ultimately turned the tide of the trial in his favor. The defense didn't just sit back and wait for the prosecution to make mistakes. They proactively dismantled every aspect of the charges against him. One of the strongest tactics employed by Diddy's defense was their aggressive cross-examination of the prosecution's key witnesses. The defense team expertly poked holes in their testimonies, exposing inconsistencies and contradictions. For example, one witness, who had claimed to see Diddy at the scene of a violent altercation, was grilled on the details. Under pressure, the witness admitted they couldn't remember crucial specifics about the scene, weakening their credibility. Additionally, the defense uncovered critical information about the witnesses' criminal backgrounds and financial incentives, casting serious doubt on their motives and reliability. These moments were pivotal, as they not only dismantled the witnesses' testimonies, but also planted seeds of doubt in the jury's mind about the prosecution's case as a whole. Diddy's legal team also meticulously dissected the prosecution's evidence, focusing on the key pieces they presented. The defense brought in forensic experts who quickly pointed out flaws in the surveillance footage that was supposed to implicate Diddy. Experts confirmed that the video had been altered and couldn't be relied upon. They also showed that crucial pieces of physical evidence, such as fingerprints or DNA, were either missing or inconclusive. Beyond challenging the evidence, Diddy's defense worked hard to humanize him. They presented him as a hard-working entrepreneur, with no history of criminal activity, highlighting his contributions to the community and his philanthropic efforts. This approach helped shift the narrative, painting Diddy not as a criminal mastermind, but as a victim of overblown accusations. In the end, Diddy's defense team turned the trial on its head by exposing the prosecution's flaws, casting doubt on their evidence, and showcasing Diddy's character. The pivotal moment came when the prosecution's case was dealt its final blow, and it came from an unexpected source: the prosecutor's own admission. After weeks of presenting what seemed like an airtight case, the prosecution was forced to admit a critical failure. The crucial piece of evidence they had been relying on, the surveillance footage, was compromised. The prosecution, once confident that this footage would be the nail in Diddy's coffin, was now forced to confess that the video had been altered, making it inadmissible in court. The revelation shocked the courtroom. What had initially seemed like a strong case against Diddy had been dismantled by the very evidence that was supposed to convict him. This admission left the prosecution in an impossible position. They had no other substantial evidence to prove their charges. Without the footage and with key witnesses discredited, the case against Diddy collapsed in front of the jury's eyes. In the face of mounting uncertainty and a complete lack of reliable evidence, Diddy's defense team quickly seized the opportunity, requesting a mistrial. The judge, frustrated with the prosecution's handling of the case, granted the motion, effectively ending the trial and clearing the way for Diddy's acquittal. As the judge's gavel struck and the case against him officially collapsed, Diddy's reaction was a mix of relief and exhaustion. Throughout the trial, he had maintained a calm, collected demeanor, but the toll of the legal battle was evident. For weeks, his reputation and freedom hung in the balance, and now, with the charges dropped, he was free. But this victory came at a cost. While legally exonerated, the public scrutiny Diddy had faced left a mark on his image, one that would take time to fully repair. The media had relentlessly followed the case, and while Diddy was cleared, the whispers and doubts surrounding him would linger for a long while. As for his future, Diddy faced both opportunities and challenges. Legally, this victory might close the chapter on this particular battle, but there were still potential ramifications: the lingering reputational damage, ongoing public attention, and possible future legal challenges from other quarters. His business empire might have survived, but the shadows cast by these allegations would follow him for years to come. Diddy's legal team had won this round, but the fight for his legacy and public perception was far from over. The real question was, what comes next? While Diddy's trial was a high-profile celebrity case, its implications reached far beyond the entertainment industry. The prosecution's failure highlighted serious flaws in the legal system, particularly in how celebrity cases are handled. The pressure to convict someone with such public influence can lead to rushed or flawed investigations, where evidence is manipulated or overlooked in favor of sensationalism. This trial demonstrated how easily a case can fall apart when the facts are shaky and the legal process is mishandled. Furthermore, it raised questions about the role of media in influencing public opinion and the courtroom process. Throughout the trial, the media painted Diddy as a criminal before he had even been proven guilty, creating an environment of public distrust and trial by media. This can be dangerous for both the accused and the integrity of the justice system itself. The Diddy case serves as a warning for future high-profile trials, illustrating the consequences of a legal system that sometimes prioritizes spectacle over solid evidence. As we saw, it's not just about proving guilt or innocence, it's about ensuring that justice is done fairly and without bias, regardless of who stands in the defendant's seat. While Diddy may have emerged victorious in this trial, the question remains, is this truly the end? The legal system has been shaken, but Diddy's future is still uncertain. With whispers of more investigations and unanswered questions lingering in the air, one has to wonder if this case has only scratched the surface. Could there be deeper, more shocking revelations waiting to be uncovered? The battle may be over for now, but the war for Diddy's legacy and freedom is far from finished. While Diddy may have walked away from the courtroom a free man, the real question is, how long will he remain in the clear? Rumors are already circulating that there are new, undisclosed investigations into his business empire, and whispers of more charges lurking in the shadows. Could there be a bigger conspiracy at play? One that the prosecution was too afraid to expose? As Diddy moves forward, the spotlight is still on him, and his every move will be watched. Will the past come back to haunt him? Or has this trial truly been his last? Stay tuned. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and drop comment below.